Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm pre-sales manager for this region at RSA. You know certainly RSA for a long time. We've been here in the security landscape for more than 20 or even 30 years. And today I want to speak about some concept around what is beyond Siem and evolved Siem and the platform that we have created behind the logs and this concept for the Security Operations Center. So, what are the three main challenges today around security operation centers? What we see is that most of the analysts have a lot of issues to find the new threats and also to understand when there is an attack, what is the attack scope. And the shifting of the landscape of the threats is also very challenging because it's changing all the time. So the first part we will talk about is definitely how can we address that first point. The second point around the security operation centers, and you all know that if you are running one, is the shortage of the resources. The fact that we need more and more people skilled around the new threat and having the capacity for being very relevant shortly to identify an incident, to react on the incident. And the third challenge that we see as well is when we have an incident, it is a technical incident. What does it mean for the business? What is the impact? What is the risk impact when we have an incident within a SOC? So making the link between the alert and the business risk is very important as well as the third challenge we see. So how do we cover those challenges? What are the answers of RSA around those three challenges? The first one is really visibility. We are blind sometimes. We don't have enough data that is needed to find out what is really that attack scope, and then transforming raw data to something we can understand, something which is relevant for the analyst, something around big data and metadata that I will cover just after on the technical part of the presentation. The second way to cover those challenges is also to have capacity for investigation. Try to understand if that is a false positive very quickly. Try to understand very quickly, removing what we know which is relevant, which is known threats, to have the threats coming up. And also the brand new technologies we need, because we believe that the tools that you will use will do 50% of the job. And 50% of the job will be done by the analyst and the knowledge around the context by using the tool. But 50% is sometimes not enough, so this is why, and that has been introduced by the presentation just before as well, that we need more technical information done directly by the tool. We introduced machine learning and behavior analytics in our system of the Siem because we needed more from the tool itself. And the third is obviously, how can we mitigate? When we have an incident, this is just the beginning, this is not the end. Okay, what do we do with that incident? How can we act? What needs to be done by the people in the SOC from there? What are the procedures? What are the workflow? How can we orchestrate not only the fact that we need to close that port or shut down that machine, but we also need to react from a business perspective, from a workflow perspective. One of the quotes from one of our customers said, with RSA NetWitness, we help him to reduce the time frame and to reduce the window from a suspicious activity to react really when there is a real incident. So how we do that? So first, drilling down around visibility. We are collecting data from the endpoint. We have a component called NetWitness endpoint, part of the EDR. We're collecting data from the cloud, from the network. We're capturing the network traffic. We're also capturing the logs. An evolved Siem is something which is not only dealing with logs. We also enrich that data because if we don't have metadata, then the raw data we are collecting are useless. But of course, we're not stopping only on the threat intelligence. We're also making the link between the business risk and the compliance context when we collect data. Then the investigation part. We can correlate many sources of data with that platform, not only the logs. We can also use brand new techniques and threat intelligence to be able to understand if there is something which is abnormal in the system. All that kind of platform, the main relevant information that we can capture is to answer, is that normal or not normal? So for that, we need much more than just the logs. We need to capture the network, we need to capture the endpoint information with an EDR, and also the cloud information to put that to one single platform. That's what's the goal of NetWitness. And obviously for the third question, how do we remediate? Remediation is not only deleting data. Remediation is not blocking a malware or just isolate a laptop. Remediation means understanding the scope of the attack to change something in the system and potentially also in the organization, and then being able to not only just having technical remediation, but orchestrate globally the answer of the attack. So we have put everything that I just explained into one platform called RSA NetWitness. On the left, we collect data. In the middle, on the visibility, we enrich that data for creating metadata. In the middle, we have all the capacity and the techniques and the new techniques for detecting and understanding. Detecting is very important, but understanding and investigate is as much important in order to remediate. If you don't understand the scope of the attack, if you don't have the full visibility from the endpoint through the network and from the logs in the cloud, then you cannot remediate. You cannot change what is needed to be changed in the organization and globally in the IT system to be able to answer. And when we do an answer, we do an orchestrated answer. And that is what is today a platform and not just a Siem called RSA NetWitness. What we are offering as well is a capacity for being able to be relevant very quickly. The first part on the left is a free agent which is doing part of what an EDR is doing very quickly, collecting logs data from the endpoint, collecting process data in the memory that you bring back to the platform and to the same UI. That is the first part. The second part is obviously we're talking about UEBA, and UEBA is user behavior and analytics. We're doing that as well today within the NetWitness platform from the endpoint to the logs. Now, our strategy has been validated, and we are very proud that after a couple of years, today RSA is in the leader of the Gartner for the Siem. So on top right now, you can see that we are back again. We've been there a couple of years ago with a very old platform today. But right now, our strategy has been validated by the analyst, and Gartner is clearly one of the key analysts here in this business. And this is very important for us going forward. Now, let's talk a little bit about, from the technical audience, what are around those concepts. So number one, again, we are collecting logs, packets, NetFlow, and endpoint within one single technology. What does it mean? Which means that if I take the example of the logs, it's phone bill. We know that someone has called someone else. IP source, IP destination. We know potentially more because we are collecting logs from smart devices and intelligence, but at the end of the day, this is just phone bill. And then the attackers try to avoid, keeping traces. So sometimes, for some of the elements, we are completely blind with the logs. We added the packet part, the network capture, to have the full conversation, okay? Now that we have the full conversation, we want to understand, why that IP address has been compromised. And this is why we need to have an EDR, and at RSA we have NetWitness endpoint, which is capable of giving you the answer, hey, what's happened on that endpoint, whatever it is a server, whatever it is a real endpoint from a laptop perspective, what has been compromised, then that communication occurred. And obviously, the net flow is giving you much more data for example, lateral movement or RDP. In a nutshell, this is a log. Okay, IP source, IP destination, this is what I have. I can enrich with threat intel. We are also providing threat intel at RSA, but it is an open platform. But when we collect payload and when we collect network, we give much more information. For example, that zip file that has been traced in the logs is encrypted, okay? Is that an element? Yes, because as an analyst, if I see a zip file that has been encrypted, for me, it's clearly an important, relevant information from a threat perspective. But if I want to go more, I want to understand what are the commands that has been really passed in the endpoint itself. Is that a PowerShell? PowerShell is just a tool, but that PowerShell can be used for very malicious activity, and I want to understand that. We put everything into one single platform, one single UI, then the analyst can go quicker. When I talked about enriching data, I talked about metadata. We are generating a huge amount of metadata, and all those 4 sources are fully normalized. An IP address, an IP source, a host name, I can just drill down and pivot around those metadata. And we are risk-based, which means that not everything is black or white. It's in fact gray, and I want to understand if it is dark gray or light gray, and this is exactly what we give as a tool for our analysts. Again, I've talked about threat intel. We are providing a threat intel directly within the platform called RSA Live, which is part of our own cert, but this is a completely open platform. You can integrate with 2 standards, Taxi and Sticks, and then we can also use any kind of third-party vendor that we are partnering with in order to have that platform enriching. Do you still hear me? Okay, fine, because I don't hear. Almost hearing me. So we also have done a work, because a lot of people today are relying on that very, very important framework called MITRE ATT&CK, that we have the MIST from a process perspective, but MITRE ATT&CK today is widely used for building the security operations center. So what we've done is answering to one of our main questions, say, what do you cover which is needed logs, and sometimes you need network, or sometimes you need endpoints. So use case per use case, we've done that exercise to help you understand why we have created that platform. But sometimes we need only the endpoint, and we have the full visibility that we need. But sometimes you need a combination between logs, network, and endpoint, and potentially as well behavior analytics on top of that to understand such kind of use cases. Obviously, this is just a slide, but we have a huge document explaining in more details what we do with the MITRE framework. In a nutshell, RSA NetWitness is a fully integrated, unified platform. When we say unified, from the backend to the UI, to be able to completely go largely behind the classical Siem on log-based. So we are not log-centric. We are giving the capacity for SOC to manage the complete visibility that they need. Thank you.